Welcome to the Midnight Codex, where forgotten truths breathe and shadows tell their tale. Tonight, don't blink and don't look behind you.
I need to write this down. Maybe someone will believe me, but I don't think I have much time left. I've been sitting here for what feels like hours, staring at these words, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The silence around me is oppressive, like the whole world is holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for me to finish what I started. But every time I try to type, my mind flashes back to the events that led me here. And I hesitate. I never thought I'd end up in this place, writing in the dead of night, with the creeping feeling that I'm being watched. The truth is, I can't stop. I can't let go of what I've found, even though I know it's a trap I've walked right into with no way out. It's strange, isn't it, how something so small, like a book or a map, can destroy everything. I thought I had everything figured out. A successful career, a respected position in the field of religious studies, accolades for my research, and an office at one of the world's most prestigious institutions. But it all came crashing down in an instant. It wasn't a scandal, not in the way you'd expect. No, I was forced out, expelled for asking the wrong questions. The Vatican didn't like the direction my research was heading. They said I was getting too close to a truth that could shake the very foundation of the church. They warned me, subtly at first, then more aggressively. But I couldn't stop. I was so close. I had uncovered pieces of a puzzle, fragments of a story that had been hidden for centuries. It began with an ancient manuscript I found buried in the restricted section of the library. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. The text was written in a language that seemed half forgotten, its symbols faintly glowing in the dim light of the library. The pages were worn, but the words spoke of something that could not be ignored. A map that would lead to something beyond mortal comprehension. They called it the Map of the Inferno. Most of my colleagues scoffed at it, dismissing it as a medieval legend, a fabrication created to instill fear. But I knew better. I felt it. There was something real about it. I pored over it for weeks, following the obscure clues hidden in the margins. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became that this was not just a myth. This map led somewhere important. But I was not prepared for what came next. After weeks of relentless research, I was summoned. They gave me no warning, no explanation. One morning, I walked into the office to find my keycard disabled, my desk cleared out. The letter they left behind was simple, but its meaning was clear. You are no longer welcome. Leave before it's too late. The words were unsettling, but I wasn't about to be cowed by vague threats. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about the truth, about the answers I had been so desperately seeking. That night, I returned to the Vatican, alone. No longer an insider, but an intruder. The shadows of the ancient city seemed deeper that night, as if the entire place was holding its breath. I walked through the deserted streets of Vatican City, past the towering stone walls, through the arches of ancient basilicas, feeling an overwhelming sense of foreboding. I had been here countless times before, but now it felt different, darker, colder, as if the very air was closing in on me. I didn't know where I was going, but I followed the instinct that had brought me this far. It was then that I saw her. She stood under the flickering light of a lamppost, her silhouette sharp against the shadows. There was something about her, something that pulled me in. She was tall, with dark, sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. Her expression was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet tension that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. She didn't introduce herself at first, but instead, her gaze met mine, and she spoke as though she had been expecting me. You're looking for answers, she said flatly, as though she had known I would be here. But you're already too deep. They've warned you, haven't they? The church doesn't like people like you. The words hit me like a slap in the face. How did she know? My throat went dry. I hesitated, not knowing what to say. I had no idea who this woman was or why she was talking to me. You're David, right? The historian who couldn't let go of the truth, the one they couldn't silence, she continued, her voice soft but laced with something almost sad. I used to work here, in the archives. I was part of the research team that discovered the map, but I left, because I saw things you shouldn't see. Her words felt like a warning, but also an invitation, and despite the lingering fear gnawing at me, I couldn't resist. She stepped forward, closing the distance between us. I know why you're here. I know what you've found, and I know what you've gotten yourself into. Before I could speak, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of aged parchment. As she handed it to me, I felt a strange heat radiating from the paper, as though it were alive. I could barely touch it, my fingers trembling. The map was unlike anything I had seen before, its edges glowing faintly in the dim light, as though it held a secret I wasn't ready to know. It's not just a map, she said quietly. It's a key to the truth that the church has hidden for centuries. But be warned, David, there are forces at play here that you cannot control. Once you begin, there's no turning back. This is no longer about knowledge, it's about power. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I knew she was right. I had crossed a line. There was no way to walk away now. Why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She met my gaze with a look that seemed to pierce straight through me. Because you're the one who can see it. You're the one who's not afraid to look. But be careful, David. Some truths should remain buried, and once you open that door, you might not like what's on the other side. The weight of her words settled over me like a cloak of dread. I could feel the presence of something ancient and malevolent looming behind her, but I couldn't back down now. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. As I walked away, the map burning a hole in my pocket, Aurelia's final words echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone here, not even yourself. The truth will consume you. It was too late. I'd taken the first step down a path that could only lead one way, and I was already too far gone to turn back. For days, I couldn't stop staring at the map. It consumed me. Each line etched into the parchment seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as though it were waiting for me to decipher its meaning. The words written in that ancient script were not like anything I had ever seen before, symbols and markings, strange and cryptic, far beyond the reach of any modern understanding. At first, I thought it was just a matter of translation, a few key references here and there. But the more I studied, the more I realized I was out of my depth. I reached out to a few colleagues, hoping to find someone who could shed some light on the puzzle I had unwittingly stumbled upon. But their reactions were not what I expected. I had hoped they would share my excitement, my drive to uncover what lay hidden within these pages. Instead, I was met with skepticism and suspicion. It's just a myth, Professor Holt told me, his voice dripping with condescension as he glanced at the map in my hands. People have been chasing shadows like this for centuries. There's no historical basis for it. The idea of a map leading to the gates of hell? Absurd. But the more I heard that word, absurd, the more convinced I became that I was on the right track. I had seen what this map could do. It was more than just a piece of ancient parchment. It was a key to something far older, something that had been concealed from the world for a reason. I couldn't shake the feeling that what I was holding was not a relic of the past, but something alive, waiting for the right person to come along and unlock its secrets. That night, I found myself in the quiet of the Vatican's library once again. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, and the quiet hum of the city outside seemed to disappear as I spread the map out on the desk before me. The faint light from the overhead lamp flickered, casting long shadows across the pages. I could hear the soft rustle of the map as I traced the lines with my fingers, trying to make sense of the script. It was then that I noticed something strange. The letters on the map began to shift, just slightly. At first, I thought it was my imagination. After all, the exhaustion from days of research was starting to get to me. But then it happened again. A symbol, one I hadn't seen before, began to glow faintly beneath my fingertips. And then another. It was as if the map itself was responding to my touch. I leaned in closer, heart pounding in my chest as the symbol started to glow brighter. My breath caught in my throat as a new phrase materialized in front of me, scrawled in the same mysterious script. It was as if the map were alive, its ancient magic reaching out to me. If you wish to know the truth, you must walk into the darkness. I recoiled slightly, a shiver running down my spine. The words seemed to echo in my mind, reverberating in the quiet of the library. I wasn't sure what they meant, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stop now. I couldn't walk away. Something deep inside me, something I couldn't explain, pushed me forward. I glanced around the room, ensuring I was still alone. The soft rustling of pages in the distance was the only sound breaking the silence, but I felt the weight of something watching me, something waiting. I turned my attention back to the map, my fingers trembling as I traced the newly illuminated path. The map no longer felt like a mere piece of history. It felt like a doorway, a gateway to something beyond my understanding. But what did it mean? The darkness? Was it a metaphor? Or was there something more, something real, waiting for me? The longer I looked at the map, the more it seemed to shift, as though it were changing its form to match my deepest thoughts, my deepest fears. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the words. Was this some kind of ancient ritual? A puzzle left for someone to solve, hidden away for centuries by those who feared the knowledge contained within it? I felt an overwhelming compulsion to follow the path, to see where it led. The map was telling me something, urging me to move forward, but every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop, to put it down and walk away. This wasn't just about the map anymore. It was about something much darker, something I couldn't possibly understand. I glanced at the clock. It was already past midnight. The library was empty, the silence almost suffocating. My fingers ached from touching the map, but I couldn't pull away. I didn't want to. The pull of the unknown was too strong. I could almost hear the map whispering to me now, urging me on. The darkness wasn't a metaphor. It was real, and it was waiting for me. It called to me, a siren song I couldn't resist. I shoved the map into my bag and left the library in a daze, my mind swirling with questions I couldn't answer. The city outside was still and silent, and the air felt colder than it had before. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that something or someone was watching my every move. By the time I returned to my apartment, the weight of what I had discovered was beginning to settle in. The arts map had already changed me. It was pulling me deeper into a web of mystery I wasn't sure I could escape. And yet, there was no turning back. I sat down at my desk and unrolled the map once more. The symbols shimmered faintly under the dim light of my desk lamp, and the phrase that had appeared earlier still lingered in my mind. If you wish to know the truth, you must walk into the darkness. The map seemed to be waiting for me. I was no longer just a historian or a scholar. I had become something else, someone willing to risk everything to uncover the forbidden. And as I stared at the map, I knew that this was just the beginning. The darkness was closer than I had ever imagined. It was inside me now. It was calling to me. My footsteps echoed through the narrow hallways, the cold stone beneath my feet seeming to drain the energy from my body. Although I didn't want to admit it, a part of me wanted to stop. Each step drew me deeper into the unknown, and with every passing moment, I felt the weight of the decisions I had made pressing against me. But something inside me wouldn't let me turn back. I had come too far, and now there was no turning back. The space within the Vatican felt darker, more oppressive with each step. I no longer recognized the familiar halls, the paintings, the statues. Everything seemed strange, as if the place itself was rejecting me. The walls, once symbols of sanctity, now seemed oppressive, suffocating. I could no longer see my reflection in the stone, but I could feel the eyes of something watching me, something hidden in the shadows, waiting for me to cross a line I couldn't see. For the first time since I started this journey, I felt true fear. Not the curiosity-driven anticipation, but a deep, visceral fear. I was no longer sure if I had control of what was happening. The further I went, the more I felt the difference in the air. The walls, the hallways, everything around me seemed to shift and change. The shadows grew longer, darker, almost alive, like they were reaching for me. The whispers began. They were soft at first, distant, but they grew louder as I moved forward, and I could swear they were speaking my name. I couldn't make out the words, but they were there, subtle, insistent, as if someone was behind me, watching my every move. The eerie sensation that I was not alone began to grow stronger. Then I came to the door. It was like no door I had ever seen in the Vatican. It wasn't a relic from the past, but something far older, far more powerful. The wood was dark, almost black, and carved with intricate symbols I didn't understand. The air around it felt thicker, more oppressive, as if the door itself was keeping something at bay, something ancient, something terrible. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't stop myself. I knew deep down that once this door opened, there would be no going back. Yet, despite the overwhelming sense of dread, I turned the handle and opened the door. The hinges creaked as the door slowly opened, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into an abyss of darkness. The air smelled of dampness, mildew, and something else, a scent I couldn't place. The deeper I went, the colder the air became, and the weight pressing on my chest grew heavier. Each step felt like it was pulling me further away from everything I knew, dragging me into a place where nothing made sense. I reached the bottom of the stairs, and the space before me opened up into a vast, cavernous room. It was cold, and the air was thick with the stench of decay and age. The dim light from the torches lining the walls barely cut through the darkness, casting long, unnerving shadows that danced around me. The room seemed alive, filled with a presence that wasn't entirely human. It was as if the room itself was breathing, watching, waiting. I stepped further into the room, the floor uneven beneath my feet. The stones were slick with moisture, covered in dust and debris. And then, as I moved deeper, I saw it, the blood. The dark, dried stains that covered the stone floor, as if someone, something, had been dragged through here. My stomach turned as I bent closer, seeing the remnants of an old struggle. The blood was old, coagulated, but still fresh enough to carry the heavy scent of death. The sight made my heart race, but I couldn't turn away. My body moved on its own accord, each step dragging me closer to the center of the room. And there, in the middle of the room, was the altar. It was a large stone structure, ancient and covered in the same bloodstains. The symbols carved into the altar were identical to those on the door, the ones I had seen earlier. This was no ordinary altar. It felt wrong, as though it had been used for something dark, something unspeakable. And then I saw it, a body. At first I thought it was a corpse, but as I drew closer, I realized it wasn't just any body. It was a man, but his features were twisted, distorted. His skin was pale and stretched over his bones, his eyes wide open, frozen in terror. His mouth was open, but no sound came from it, a silent scream that would never be heard. The blood around him was still fresh, though, and the body had been placed on the altar with unnatural precision. I stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't what I had imagined. This wasn't part of the map. This was something else, something I had never expected. I tried to turn away, but the room around me had shifted. The door I had entered through was gone. The space was now a vast, endless chamber of stone, the walls closing in around me. The whispers had returned, louder this time, more insistent, filling my ears with their call. Leave. Leave now. I spun around, panic rising in my chest. The darkness seemed to be swallowing me whole. The map was gone, vanished into thin air. I couldn't remember how I had gotten here, where I had come from, or where I was supposed to go next. My mind was racing, my breath shallow. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I couldn't escape. I couldn't even move. It hit me then. I was trapped. Trapped not just in this room, but in this place. In this trap I had created for myself. The map, the symbols, the whispers. They were all part of something far bigger than I had ever imagined. Something ancient, something dark. And now I was part of it. The silence that followed me down the winding corridor was suffocating. I'd been walking for what felt like hours, but time seemed irrelevant in this place. The air was thick with the weight of ancient secrets, and each step I took felt like a quiet descent into something far darker than I could comprehend. The map in my pocket seemed to hum against my chest, urging me forward, pulling me deeper into the unknown. Eventually, I arrived at the end of the hall. The door before me was unlike the others I had encountered, ancient, yet somehow new. It stood there, imposing and stern, its wood dark and scarred by age, its carvings intricate but unintelligible to me. The door seemed to pulse with an unseen force, beckoning me to enter. I hesitated. There was no turning back now, but the fear was overwhelming. I took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I reached for the door. The instant my fingers brushed the cold wood, the door swung open of its own accord, revealing a dimly lit chamber. At the far side of the room, sitting at an ancient desk surrounded by shelves filled with dusty tomes, was a man. A figure so still, so quiet, that for a moment I wondered if he was even alive. He looked up as I entered. His eyes, dark and endless, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "You've come," he said, his voice low and steady, carrying an unsettling weight. "I've been waiting for you." I stood frozen, unable to speak. His presence was both commanding and unnerving, as though everything in the room, the very air, bent to his will. He was not like the others I had encountered. His presence was not one of authority, but of something far older, something that transcended time itself. He stood slowly, his long black robe sweeping the floor, and took a step toward me. "I am the keeper of the map," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "And you are not worthy." The words struck me like a physical blow, and my heart skipped a beat. Not worthy? What did that mean? I was the one who had found the map, the one who had been chosen to follow it, to uncover its secrets. I was the one who had gotten this far. "What do you mean?" I forced myself to ask, my voice shaking slightly. I followed it. I've been following the map. I know what it leads to." The keeper's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile, but it was devoid of warmth. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with disdain. "You followed it, but—"
"Your kidneys do their quiet repair work. Without sleep, everything falters." Next came her activity level. Patricia had gone from constant motion to long, still hours, sitting, scrolling, resting more than moving. It felt like a deserved break after years of teaching. But the truth is, sedentary living slows metabolism, increases insulin resistance, and leads to fat buildup around the kidneys, all of it chipping away at function. And finally, her meals. Patricia had developed a love for meat-heavy dishes. Sausages, steak, grilled meats several times a week. She wasn't overeating, but the choices added up. Too much animal protein creates acid in the body, and your kidneys have to work overtime to neutralize it. Over time, this leads to something called metabolic acidosis, a slow, corrosive process that increases the risk of kidney disease. Patricia never felt pain, never saw it coming. Fatigue, restless nights, less movement, heavier meals. They all seemed like part of getting older, but together, they quietly overloaded her kidneys. Coming up next, we'll look at how simple dietary swaps can make a powerful difference and help restore kidney resilience. Even habits rooted in love, in family tradition, in meals passed down for generations, can quietly put pressure on the kidneys. That was the case for Samuel Lee. 73, a retired carpenter, soft-spoken, hard-working, devoted to his family. Samuel grew up in a home where every meal centered around meat. Pork ribs, beef stew, grilled chicken, always hearty, always satisfying, served with rice or warm bread. He believed those meals made him strong. He never questioned them. But when recent blood work showed signs of kidney stress, Samuel was surprised. He had no major medical history. He felt fine, But the numbers told another story. The problem wasn't just the meat. It was the amount and the kind. Red meat, processed meat, heavy portions, day after day. These foods create acid in the blood. Your kidneys work hard to neutralize that acid. Over time, that constant effort wears them down. Studies have shown that diets heavy in red and processed meat are linked to a higher risk of chronic kidney disease. And when those diets are paired with other quiet risks, the damage comes faster. One of those risks? Sitting. After breakfast, Samuel would read the paper, then sit down to watch TV. Hours would pass. He told himself he was moving, just walking around the house. But the truth is, prolonged sitting reduces circulation, raises blood sugar, and slows kidney filtration. Inactivity has become a silent threat to kidney health. And then there was his blood pressure. For years, Samuel had borderline high readings, but he felt fine, didn't want to take medication, didn't see the need. What he didn't know was that high blood pressure silently damages the fragile vessels in the kidneys.
The rules of time and space had no power here. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world around me warped. The air shimmered with a strange energy, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, like I was standing on the precipice of something far more dangerous than I could understand. And yet, the allure of the unknown pulled me deeper into this dark place. I was no longer sure of where I was. The room, if you could even call it that, seemed to stretch on forever, an infinite expanse that folded in on itself like an origami nightmare. The walls, if there were even walls, writhed and shifted, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow that seemed to laugh at my attempts to make sense of them. It felt as though the very ground beneath me was alive in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Around me, there were no doors, no windows, nothing but endless space. The only thing that defined this place was the sound. Low, guttural whispers filled the air, growing louder the further I walked. I could hear the faint cries of people, no, souls, screaming in torment, but their voices never reached me fully. They sounded muffled, distant, as though the very sound itself was too weak to travel across the space. And then I saw them. The souls. They were not like any people I had ever seen. Twisted, malformed figures, barely humanoid. Their eyes were hollow, vacant, yet filled with an infinite depth of despair. They moved in an uncoordinated manner, dragging themselves across the shifting terrain, as if they were bound by invisible chains. Some of them would look up at me with eyes that seemed to see, but others passed by without a glance, their hollow faces twisted with eternal suffering. But it wasn't just the souls. The air was thick with creatures, things that no human could ever hope to understand. The first one I saw had a body that seemed to be made of shifting shadows, with limbs that stretched unnaturally long and thin, like they were never meant to be. Its eyes glowed red, piercing the darkness as it studied me from a distance. It made no sound, it didn't move, but it watched, always watching. I turned away from it, my pulse racing. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. But how? How could I possibly escape a place like this? I reached into my pocket, but the map was gone. The very thing that had brought me here, that had guided me to this unimaginable place, was no longer in my possession. I was alone, trapped. I could feel the weight of something else in the air now, an intangible presence watching me. The whispers in the air grew more insistent, more personal. They were calling to me, urging me to listen. But I couldn't hear the words. Not yet. I walked further, deeper into the darkness, my heart thundering in my chest. The very act of moving forward felt like I was walking into something worse. I wasn't just walking into hell, I was walking into my own soul's undoing. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw it, a massive doorway, carved into the very stone that formed the walls of this endless void. It was an ancient archway, its shape familiar yet twisted, as though something human had tried to create it, but something far darker had taken over. The whispering voices reached a crescendo. They became louder, more urgent. The voices weren't just trying to speak to me, they were commanding me. I could feel the heavy presence behind me, a presence that seemed to know my every thought. It was as if the very place itself was aware of me, pulling me deeper into its web. The doorway in front of me beckoned, but there was no way to know what lay beyond it. Was it another dimension, another layer of hell, or was it the way out? I walked toward the door, my hands shaking as I reached for the cold stone surface. The air around me grew colder, suffocating. I didn't dare look behind me. I knew what would happen if I did. I had to keep moving, had to keep pressing forward, but the weight of what was happening was unbearable. I had to make a choice. As I stood before the door, I felt my mind unraveling. The voices in my head were louder now, pulling me toward the dark abyss that awaited on the other side. The decision before me was clear, but it was far from simple. Could I return to the world I once knew, to the life I had been so desperate to reclaim? Or was this my fate now, to be consumed by this place, like the countless souls around me? The door loomed before me, ancient and foreboding, its surface covered in the same runes and symbols that had haunted my every step. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, urging me to decide, to choose. I stood there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. This was it, the end of the path, the final decision. I had come this far, but now I was not sure if I wanted to know the truth anymore. I had descended into this hellish place with only the map as my guide, believing that I could uncover secrets that the world was never meant to see. But now, standing in front of this door, I realized I had made a fatal mistake. I wasn't supposed to be here. The world I had known, the life I had left behind, seemed like a distant memory, a dream that had already faded. This place, this realm, it was never meant for me. But it was too late for regrets. The whispers around me had grown louder, urgent, impatient. They weren't just voices anymore. They were a part of me, crawling beneath my skin, urging me forward. "Step through, David," one voice whispered, barely audible, yet unmistakably clear. "Step through, and it will all be yours." The words sent a chill down my spine. The temptation to continue was overwhelming, to walk through this door and claim whatever power or knowledge lay on the other side. But was I ready to face the consequences? I turned back to look at the hellish landscape I had left behind, the souls that dragged themselves through the darkness, their hollow eyes filled with despair. I had already seen too much, and yet there was more. I stepped closer to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers were all around me now, growing louder with each step I took. It was as though the door was calling me, beckoning me to cross the final threshold. As I reached for the door, my fingers brushed the cold surface. The symbols on the door seemed to react, shifting beneath my touch as though they were alive. I pulled my hand back, but the door didn't open. It didn't need to. The air around me began to hum with a low, vibrating energy. I felt my skin tingle as though I was standing too close to something powerful, something ancient. And then I heard it. A voice, not a whisper this time, but a command. "You have reached the point of no return, David." I turned, my heart leaping into my throat, but there was no one behind me, no one to explain. The voice had come from within, from the very core of this place. The keeper's words echoed in my mind. "You've crossed the threshold." I had crossed it, no turning back now. I stepped forward, reaching for the door once again. The weight of the choice hit me. What did I truly want? What was I looking for? Power, knowledge, redemption. As I gripped the handle, the room seemed to close in around me. The air became thick and suffocating, and I could feel the eyes of 1,000 souls watching me, waiting. They knew what would happen next. And just as I was about to turn the handle, something shifted within me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had already made my choice. Every step I had taken, the decision to follow the map, to defy the rules, to push past every warning, had led me here. I'd already chosen to be a part of this place. Every action, every choice had bound me to it. The secrets I had uncovered, the knowledge I had sought, had already begun to consume me. The door, cold beneath my fingertips, began to open on its own. I stepped through, not because I wanted to, but because I was compelled to. As I crossed the threshold, I felt the darkness close around me. It wasn't just physical, it was in my soul now. The weight of this place, the burden of the choice, was pressing down on me, suffocating me. I could feel the echoes of the souls that were trapped here, forever bound to the place they had never asked to enter. But it was too late to turn back. A deep, resonating voice spoke again, this time clearer than before. "You belong here now, David." I froze. The words sank into my chest like a stone. Belong here? This place wasn't meant to be a destination. It wasn't supposed to be my home, my fate. I had crossed the line. I had made the choice that had led me here. The door slammed shut behind me, and I turned, but it was no use. The way back was gone. I was now part of this place, part of the endless loop of lost souls that wandered these desolate corridors, their cries echoing through the walls. Their suffering had become my own. I reached out into the void, but my hand met only the cold stone of this prison. There was no escape, no turning back. The whispers had stopped, but the heavy presence of the place, the overwhelming sense of dread, remained. I looked around, the darkness closing in on me. This was it. The world I had once known, the life I had left behind, was now nothing but a distant memory. I was part of something far older, far darker than I had ever imagined, and as I stood there, surrounded by shadows, a cold realization settled in my bones. I had become a part of this nightmare,